The arrogant ultimatum. Captain Sarah Mitchell stood at the viewing port of the diplomatic shuttle Harmony, watching the massive space station grow larger as they approached. The Stellar Dominion Council's headquarters was truly impressive, a crystalline structure that stretched for kilometers in every direction. Ships from dozens of alien species moved around it in perfect formation, their movements controlled by the station's traffic systems. Sarah adjusted her navy blue uniform and checked her reflection in the darkened section of the viewport. At 38, she had spent 15 years exploring the galaxy, making peaceful contact with new species and building trade relationships. Her blonde hair was pulled back in regulation style, and her green eyes held the steady gaze of someone who had negotiated with beings from 100 different worlds. She had always believed that any problem could be solved through honest conversation and mutual respect. Today, that belief would face its greatest test. The emergency message had arrived just 2 days ago, transmitted across 7 star systems to reach her exploration vessel. The Stellar Dominion Council required her immediate presence for what they called urgent discussions regarding human activities in controlled space. Sarah had been chosen as humanity's representative because of her diplomatic experience and her reputation for finding peaceful solutions to complex problems. The shuttle docked smoothly at the diplomatic bay. Sarah's small crew remained aboard while she made her way through the station's corridors. The architecture here was designed to intimidate. Soaring ceilings disappeared into shadows above, while holographic displays showed the vast territories controlled by the Council across the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of species moved through the corridors, their various forms creating a living display of galactic diversity. 3 Zelthari guards appeared beside Sarah as she approached the main council chamber. The reptilian beings stood over 8 feet tall, their scales shifting from deep green to gold depending on the angle of the light. Their eyes were large and unblinking, and they moved with the fluid grace of natural predators. Sarah had worked with Zelthari traders before and found them to be intelligent and honorable, though extremely proud of their ancient civilization. These guards, however, carried themselves differently. There was something hostile in their manner that made Sarah uneasy. The great doors to the council chamber opened with a deep musical tone. Sarah stepped inside and paused, taking in the sight before her. The chamber was circular and enormous, with tiered seating rising up on all sides. Representatives from over 150 species filled the seats, their attention focused on the center where Sarah now stood alone. At the highest tier sat the 7 members of the High Council, each representing one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. At the center position sat Overlord Kethvar, the supreme military commander of the Zelthari Empire. He was larger than the guards who had escorted her, his scales a brilliant gold that marked him as a member of the warrior caste. His species had ruled a vast empire for over 3,000 years, and their military might was legendary throughout the galaxy. Captain Sarah Mitchell of Terra, Kethvar announced, his voice carrying easily through the chamber despite its enormous size. You stand before this council as the representative of your species. We trust you are prepared to answer for humanity's recent actions. Sarah bowed slightly, following the diplomatic protocols she had learned over years of service. I am honored to represent humanity before this distinguished council. However, I must admit confusion about the nature of these proceedings. To my knowledge, humanity has committed no acts requiring explanation. A sound that might have been laughter rippled through the assembled representatives. Kethvar's golden scales seemed to shimmer as his eyes narrowed slightly. Ignorance, whether genuine or performed, does not excuse guilt, Captain. Perhaps visual evidence will help clarify the situation. The air above the chamber's center began to shimmer, and holographic images appeared. Sarah watched as scenes played out showing human ships in regions of space she had never seen before. The vessels bore Earth Federation markings, but something about them seemed wrong. The proportions were slightly off, the hull configurations not quite matching any design she recognized from the fleet registry. These images were captured over the past 4 months, announced Counselor Vexhera, an insectoid being whose translator made her voice sound like wind through crystal chimes. They show human vessels violating established neutral zones, approaching protected worlds without permission, and engaging in unauthorized resource extraction operations. Sarah studied the images carefully. Her years of experience with ship designs told her immediately that these recordings were fabricated, but they were sophisticated fakes. Someone had invested considerable time and resources in creating them. "Honorable counselors," Sarah said carefully, "I must respectfully question the authenticity of these recordings. The vessels shown do not match any design in the Earth Federation fleet. The hull markings are incorrect, and several of the ship classifications shown do not exist in our registry." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Kethvar rose from his seat, his full height making him an imposing figure even at this distance. "Are you suggesting that this council would fabricate evidence?" His voice carried a dangerous edge that made several smaller species in the gallery shift nervously in their seats. "Not at all," Sarah replied, keeping her voice steady. "I am suggesting that someone has provided you with false information, perhaps with the intention of damaging relations between humanity and this council. I formally request time for our technical experts to examine these recordings and trace their origin." The 7 council members leaned together, speaking in low tones in a language Sarah didn't recognize. Their conversation continued for several minutes while the rest of the chamber waited in tense silence. Finally, Kethvar straightened and fixed Sarah with his unblinking stare. "The Council has reviewed extensive evidence of human aggression and uncontrolled expansion beyond approved boundaries," he declared. "Your species has demonstrated a disturbing pattern of rapid growth and territorial acquisition. Furthermore, your independent development of advanced faster than light travel without Council oversight represents a significant security concern." Sarah felt her heart sink as she began to understand what was really happening. This wasn't about fabricated evidence or territorial disputes. This was about fear. The older species were afraid of humanity's rapid technological advancement and expansion into the galaxy. "Humanity has followed all established protocols," she said firmly. "We have respected all territorial boundaries, participated fully in the Galactic Trade Commission, and contributed peacekeeping forces to maintain stability in 3 different sectors. Our expansion has been peaceful and conducted with complete transparency." Kethvar's scales shifted to a deeper gold, a sign of growing aggression in his species. "Your expansion ends now," he declared with finality. "The Stellar Dominion Council hereby declares humanity a clear and present threat to galactic stability. Effective immediately, all human vessels are restricted to the Sol system. Your colonies will be placed under direct Council administration, and your military capabilities will be reduced to appropriate defensive levels only." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien voices. Some species seemed genuinely surprised by the severity of the declaration, while others voiced their approval in various forms of communication. Sarah stood in the center of it all, feeling the weight of history settling on her shoulders. She thought of the millions of humans living on distant worlds, of the families that would be separated, of the dreams and aspirations that would be crushed under the Council's decree. She thought of the children being born on colony worlds who would grow up as subjects rather than free citizens. "This is a grave mistake," she said, her voice somehow cutting through the noise and reaching every corner of the vast chamber. "Humanity will not accept subjugation. We came to the stars in peace, seeking friendship and cooperation. But we will not be enslaved." Kethvar's laugh was a sound like grinding stone. "You will comply, Captain, or face the consequences. This council commands the combined military might of 150 worlds. Humanity controls barely 23 systems. The mathematics are quite simple." Sarah activated her emergency communicator, a device that would send an encrypted burst transmission directly to Earth Command. Her voice was calm and clear as she spoke the predetermined code words that would alert her people to the crisis. "Admiral Morrison, this is Captain Mitchell. The Council has made their position clear. Initiate Protocol 7 immediately." She looked up at Kethvar, and the assembled council members, seeing the smug confidence in their alien faces. You may believe you have superior numbers, but you have made one critical error in your calculations. And what might that be? Kethvar asked with obvious amusement. You have never seen what humans are capable of when their freedom is threatened. 2 guards moved to escort Sarah from the chamber, but she walked out on her own, her head held high. As she made her way back to the docking bay, her mind was already racing ahead, thinking of the challenges that lay ahead and the responses that would soon follow. The other species had evolved as collective minds, or pack hunters, following established patterns of behavior that had served them well for millennia. They expected humanity to respond in predictable ways, to form traditional battle lines, and fight conventional wars according to accepted galactic military doctrine. They were about to learn how catastrophically wrong they were. Back aboard the Harmony, Sarah found her small crew already preparing for immediate departure. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, her communications officer, looked up from his console with worried eyes. Captain, I've transmitted the alert to Earth Command using the emergency protocols. Admiral Morrison has acknowledged receipt and is calling an immediate assembly of all available fleet commanders. Sarah nodded as she took her position in the command chair. How many Earth Federation vessels do we currently have operating in Council space? 63 ships of various classes, reported Commander Lisa Chen, her tactical officer. Most are exploration or merchant vessels, but we do have several military ships within communication range. Contact them all, Sarah ordered. Tell them to rendezvous at Freeport Station immediately. We're going to show the Council what happens when you threaten humanity's freedom. As the Harmony pulled away from the Council station, Sarah watched the massive structure shrink in the distance. The 7 High Counselors and their Supreme Military Commander probably thought they had just solved a potential problem before it could grow larger. Instead, they had just awakened something they couldn't possibly understand or control. Human ingenuity, human determination, and human fury were about to be unleashed upon the galaxy. The swift reckoning. 72 hours after declaring war on humanity, Overlord Kethvar stood before the tactical display in his command center aboard the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominance. The holographic map showed the positions of his invasion fleets across 12 star systems, each force positioned to strike at key human colonies simultaneously. By all conventional military calculations, the war should have been over within hours of its beginning. Instead, the display showed a pattern of disasters that made no sense according to established galactic warfare doctrine. Report, Kethvar demanded, his golden scales darkening with frustration. Commander Velnesh, his chief tactical officer, approached with obvious reluctance. The smaller Zelthari scales had gone pale with stress, a sign of deep anxiety in their species. Overlord, we have lost contact with the supply depot at Kepler Station. The base commander's last transmission indicated they were under attack by a single human vessel. Kethvar's eyes narrowed. One ship attacked a fortified supply depot defended by an entire squadron. According to the transmission logs, yes. The human ship appeared without warning, moving at impossible speeds. By the time our defenders could respond, critical supply lines had been severed, and the main reactor complex was compromised. Before Kethvar could respond, another officer rushed forward. Overlord, urgent reports from the Third Fleet. Admiral Mordak's forces at Proxima Station are requesting immediate reinforcements. They report coordinated attacks by human vessels across the entire sector. Kethvar studied the tactical display with growing unease. The human attacks made no sense. Instead of massing their limited forces for a single decisive battle, they were striking everywhere at once. Their ships appeared to be operating independently, hitting targets that seemed to have no strategic value. How many human ships are we facing? He asked. Intelligence estimates suggest no more than 60 vessels total, Velnesh replied. But they appear to be everywhere simultaneously. Our commanders report that human ships are using tactics we have never encountered before. Captain Sarah Mitchell's voice crackled through the communication system of the exploration vessel Pathfinder as she coordinated with human ships across the galaxy. What the aliens saw as chaos was actually a carefully orchestrated plan that had been developed over years of strategic thinking by Earth's military minds. Phoenix Squadron. Status report. Sarah transmitted on the encrypted channel. Target secured, Captain, came the reply from Commander Alex Torres aboard the science vessel Discovery. The Council's communication relay at Wolf 359 is offline. Their ships in this sector are now operating blind. Sarah smiled grimly as she checked her tactical display. While the aliens had spent centuries perfecting massive fleet battles with thousands of ships following rigid formations, humans had been forced to develop different approaches. Earth's military had studied asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics, and rapid response strategies born from conflicts on their homeworld. Excellent work, Phoenix Squadron. Proceed to secondary objectives. Remember, we're not trying to destroy their fleets. We're showing them that their assumptions about warfare are completely wrong. The human strategy was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of engaging the alien fleets directly, human ships were targeting infrastructure, supply lines, and communication networks. Each strike was precisely calculated to cause maximum disruption while avoiding unnecessary casualties. Aboard the Pathfinder, Sarah's small crew worked with the efficiency of a team that had trained together for years. Lieutenant Commander Webb monitored communications from across the galaxy, coordinating the movements of human ships with split-second timing. Commander Chen analyzed alien fleet movements, identifying weaknesses in their formations and deployment patterns. Captain, Chen reported, the aliens are trying to adapt to our tactics, but they're making a critical error. They're treating each attack as an isolated incident rather than part of a coordinated strategy. Sarah nodded. The alien species had evolved with hierarchical minds that excelled at large-scale coordination, but struggled with the kind of creative improvisation that humans took for granted. Their military doctrine emphasized overwhelming force and direct confrontation, concepts that had served them well against other species with similar approaches to warfare. Signal all units, Sarah ordered. Phase 2 is now active. It's time to show them what human creativity really looks like. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominance, Overlord Cathfar watched in growing horror as reports flooded in from across his invasion force. The humans weren't just attacking randomly. They were systematically dismantling his carefully planned offensive with surgical precision. Sir, the Fourth Fleet reports that their sensor networks have been compromised by some kind of electronic warfare we've never seen before, reported another officer. Admiral Thekfar's ships are flying blind. The Seventh Fleet has lost all communication with their supply ships, added another. They're requesting permission to withdraw to defensive positions. Kethfar's claws extended unconsciously, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. How can a primitive species with 60 ships be causing this level of disruption to our forces? Ambassador Veltar, the senior council diplomat who had initially warned against underestimating humanity, entered the command center. The elderly Zelthari's scales were a deep blue, indicating profound concern. Overlord, I have been monitoring human communications. I believe we have made a catastrophic error in our assessment of their capabilities. Explain, Kethfar demanded. We assumed that because humans are young as a spacefaring species, they would follow conventional military doctrine. We expected them to mass their forces and meet us in traditional battle formations. Instead, they are fighting like nothing we have ever encountered. Veltar activated a holographic display showing the pattern of human attacks across the galaxy. Look at this carefully, Overlord. Each strike appears random, but taken together, they form a perfect strategic web. They are not trying to defeat our fleets through force. They are demonstrating that they can cripple our ability to wage war without firing a shot at our primary battle groups. Meanwhile, Captain Mitchell was implementing the most audacious part of the human strategy. The Pathfinder dropped out of hyperspace just outside the sensor range of the Council's main fleet, which was still positioned near their headquarters station. Alex, are you ready? Sarah transmitted to Commander Torres, whose ship had taken position on the opposite side of the alien formation. Ready, Captain. This is either going to be brilliant or completely insane. With humans, those two things are often the same. Sarah replied with a grin. The two human ships began broadcasting on all Council communication frequencies simultaneously, but instead of threats or demands for surrender, they transmitted something that confused the aliens completely. Detailed technical specifications for improvements to alien ship designs, along with mathematical proofs demonstrating more efficient energy distribution systems. What are they doing? Kethvar demanded as his communication officers struggled to understand the human transmissions. They appear to be offering to help us improve our technology. Velnash replied, confusion evident in his voice. This makes no sense. They attack our supply lines and then offer technological assistance. The human broadcasts continued for exactly 17 minutes. Then both ships vanished back into hyperspace, leaving the alien fleet commanders completely bewildered. Admiral James Morrison's voice reached Sarah through the quantum communication array as she reviewed the results of Phase 2. The veteran commander's satisfaction was evident even across the vast distances of space. Outstanding work, Captain. Alien fleet movements have ground to a halt across 8 sectors. Their commanders are requesting new orders, but their communication networks are so disrupted that coherent command and control has become impossible. What's our casualty report, Admiral? Sarah asked. 0 human casualties, Sarah. Not a single ship lost, not a single crew member injured. We've effectively neutralized a galactic military force without firing a shot in anger. The final phase of the human response began exactly 96 hours after the Council's declaration of war. Sarah returned to the Council station, not as a prisoner or supplicant, but as the representative of a species that had just revolutionized galactic warfare. The same chamber that had witnessed humanity's condemnation now hosted a very different kind of meeting. Overlord Kethvar sat in his position of authority, but his golden scales had faded to a dull bronze, a sign of defeat in his species. Captain Mitchell, he said, his voice lacking its earlier confidence, the Council acknowledges that we may have miscalculated regarding human military capabilities. Sarah stood in the center of the chamber, but now she was accompanied by a dozen other human captains. Each represented a different aspect of humanity's response to the alien ultimatum. Overlord Kethvar, members of the Council, Sarah began, humanity has no desire for conquest or domination. We came to the stars seeking friends and partners, not subjects or enemies. However, we will not accept subjugation or limitations on our freedom to explore and grow. She gestured to the holographic display that now showed the current status of the alien invasion force. Ships were scattered across dozens of systems, their supply lines severed, their communication networks compromised, and their commanders completely unable to coordinate effective action. In the past 96 hours, you have seen what humans are capable of when our freedom is threatened. We have neutralized your invasion force without destroying a single ship or taking a single life. This was not an act of aggression, but a demonstration. Kethvar's voice was barely above a whisper. What do you want? We want what we have always wanted, Sarah replied. To be left alone to pursue our own destiny among the stars. To trade freely with those who wish to trade with us. To explore new worlds and make new discoveries. To live as free beings, not as subjects of an alien council. The chamber was silent for long moments. Finally, Ambassador Veltar rose from his seat. Captain Mitchell, on behalf of the Stellar Dominion Council, I formally withdraw all restrictions placed upon humanity. Your species will be granted full autonomous status, with all rights and privileges accorded to sovereign civilizations. Sarah nodded graciously. We accept your offer, Ambassador. But we also extend our own offer in return. She activated her own holographic display, showing the technical specifications that human ships had broadcast during the confusion phase of their operation. Humanity offers to share our tactical innovations with any species that wishes to learn. Not as conquerors, but as teachers. We believe the galaxy is stronger when all species can contribute their unique perspectives and abilities. As Sarah and her team prepared to leave the council station, Overlord Kethbar approached her privately. "Captain, I must ask, how did your species develop such advanced tactical thinking? Your ships, your technology, they are not superior to ours, yet you defeated us completely." Sarah smiled. "Overlord, you made the same mistake that others have made throughout human history. You assumed that superior numbers and bigger weapons automatically mean victory. But humans learned long ago that the greatest weapon in any conflict is the ability to think differently than your opponent expects." She paused at the doorway. "We spent centuries fighting each other on our home world. We learned to be creative, to adapt, to find solutions that others couldn't imagine. When you declared war on humanity, you weren't just fighting our ships or our technology. You were fighting thousands of years of human ingenuity and determination." As the human ships departed the council station, the galaxy had been forever changed. The older species had learned that age and experience were no match for creativity and determination. Humanity had secured its place among the stars, not through conquest, but through the demonstration of capabilities that others had never imagined possible. The Council's arrogant ultimatum had been met with swift and decisive action. In trying to cage humanity, they had instead unleashed human potential upon the galaxy. And they would never make that mistake again.